What's going on, wrestling fans? Jeff Upson with you. I'm back at it. This is number 2 of 4. And today we got Mitch Rupert. Happy to have Mitch here. Claudia, is Claudia not here, or is Claudia in the background somewhere?
Claudia is currently laying at my feet.
All right.
She has been a little devil dog all day.
Okay. Well, as long as she's not in the background humping pillows.
I cannot make a guarantee considering
All right.
how long we might go here.
All right. Well, Mitch, I know you were at work, but you were able to tune in a little bit to Paul and I when we talked about the 107 through 145 pound brackets and breaking those down. We're going to follow the same sort of plan and break down the 152 through heavyweight brackets here, and we got a lot of really good brackets, much like the earlier ones. I mean, I feel like the weights are even better when I'm actually speaking about them. I just feel like they're a lot better than I even expected to start. So go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, one of the things that like I was looking at, because I've gone through them and I'll have a thing up in the next day or two about the best first round matchups in both classes, AA and AAA. And it's amazing how many, especially on the AA side, I'm just going through AAA right now, but on the AA side, just how many really quality first round matches there are. The depth seems to be really good. And I think we're at a point here in Pennsylvania high school wrestling where the top tier guys are taking a step beyond the field, if that makes any sense, but there's still really good depth within both classes.
I would agree. I mean, there's a lot of good depth in a lot of these weight classes, and right, let's segue right into 152, right? Because we have 2 guys here at 152 that have met 5 times, right? They're number 1 and number 2 in the state. They've met 5 times. I mean, that's a lot, right? I mean, the fact that Connor Hare hasn't given up one yet to Cameron Milheim is impressive because I feel like it's getting a little bit closer. I mean, is it just me, or is it like, was that sort of, you've seen how many? You've almost seen all 5 of them, Mitch. Is it getting closer, or is it just the score tricking us?
I thought it was getting closer week by week. And when I talked to Connor after the district final with Cameron Milheim, he felt that they were pretty dominant, even though they were 2-point wins. And he's got a point to an extent. There haven't been a lot of instances where Cameron has been really close to scoring. Last week was a totally different story where that match went into overtime. And I really do think Cameron probably got screwed out of a win there. A little scramble early in overtime where Cameron ends up on top. He didn't have the takedown yet. Like it was not secured yet. And I think everybody I've talked to, we've agreed on that part of it. The problem was the official blew a quick whistle, gave up 2 points. The takedown hadn't been scored yet, hadn't been secured yet. So when he conferred with the secondary official, they waved it off. If they just let that sequence go another 3 or 4 seconds, I think Cameron probably gets the takedown. But as Brock Height kind of talked about with me, Connor was also in a really good spot to get to a single leg off of that scramble and work his way out of it. So last week was very close, and I don't see they're a lot closer than I thought they were at the start of this rivalry back in a dual meet in January, and I think that's because Cameron has really brought his game up. I think these 2 guys are the best 2 guys in the weight class, and I think the gap between Connor and Cameron isn't as far apart as it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago.
And that makes total sense. And I, your first problem is listening to Brock Height, right? I mean, the king of scrambling is, the king of craps, all the things that he does. I would say that, yes, it when you wrestle a guy 5 times, it doesn't matter what the gap was to start. It's going to trend towards a little bit more even of a matchup, right? Just because of familiarity, just because of strategy a little bit, right? So I'm not surprised to see it get a little bit closer, maybe as a score would indicate. Let's look at the bracket here, Mitch, and we'll start at the top half. Some first round matches that I'm really looking forward to. I've highlighted here. Isaiah Pisano of Hopewell. He comes in ranked number 10 in the state, and Colin Summers of Sharpsville That's an interesting one for me because Pisano is making a second trip to Hershey, finished third in the region. He's had a few losses this year. He lost to Ty Waters, which, that's not too surprising. Lost to Summers, but really, I think this is going to be this was a rematch, obviously, and last time it was a decision. So I'm looking forward to this one. And Ryan Seleshi and Story Buchanan. I don't know if you know much about the outside of District 4. I know you know a little bit. Ryan Seleshi of Fraser has had a really good sophomore campaign. He ended up finishing second in the region. And Story Buchanan, on the other hand, he came in ranked very high in the state, lost in the regional tournament, and ends up finishing third there. So I think that sort of hurt him a little bit in the draw because I think he probably could have ended up away from Conhair. But as you mentioned, it's not like you're not going to escape too far away from either Milheim or Hare. Once you're going to run into one of them eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we'll get there, but the bottom half of the bracket it's no slouch either. But those are the Story Buchanan is the guy that I looked at quite a bit. Number one, that's a great name. Story Buchanan is just a great name, great wrestling name. And the more I kind of looked into it, the more I liked kind of his background. I tend to favor guys who have been here before, because if you haven't wrestled in this environment before at the Giants Center, it's a little different. And It's not just because of all the fans in there, because on Thursday that it won't be super packed, but just everything going on around you. It's hard to kind of get focused in. So I tend to lean towards those guys who have been there before. And Ryan Seleshi and Storm Buchanan, they're on my list of the best opening round matchups, because I think that's one you're really going to have to watch. And, that leads me into that quarterfinal match with Story Buchanan and probably Cale Weidemoyer too. That's going to be one of those must-watch quarterfinal matches where I think either one of those guys could come out into the semifinals, where they're probably going to see Connor Hare. But that first round match is key for both of those guys, because you want to have an opportunity to get to the semifinals. In a weight class that's as deep as this one, you don't want to have to fight tooth and nail through the consolations if you don't have to try and get on the podium. So
if you have a favorable matchup on the front side, you got to take advantage of that.
Absolutely.
Right? You got to win those tight battles if you have any chance or any aspirations of getting on the podium here. And Story Buchanan, I think he's looking for some revenge, because he came into the regional tournament undefeated, right? He came in undefeated, ranked top 3 in the state, and then loses the Summers in a 10-8 match, bounces back, does finish in third, but now he's going to open up with a tough match there, number 6 versus number 9. And I agree with you. I think Cale Weidemoyer is an absolute stud. We saw that from day one when he wrestled Connor Hare in the Cumberland Valley Kickoff Classic Finals. The kid can wrestle. He's not afraid to wrestle some of these bigger name guys. And he's really shown that throughout the postseason, not only from a team, or not only from an individual, but also during the team tournament. We've seen a lot of high performances from him, right? So I think he's a very solid number 3 behind Connor Hare and Cameron Milheim. Also on that top half, I like Aiden Hunsinger from Wyalusing and Sam Albright from Chestnut Ridge. Sam Albright from Chestnut Ridge, maybe one of the most impressive or most improved wrestlers from a year ago. He's had just a really good senior campaign, 30-9 on the season, comes in ranked number 21. Hunsinger, on the other hand, is number 20. He's had a quiet, good year for him out of Wyalusing, Mitch. I know you get to see him a lot more than I do, but I got to see him at the Ultimate Warrior tournament where he impressed me there.
Yeah, those Wyalusing kids in general, they had a really good regional tournament last week. You guys talked about Cole Patrick earlier on. He had a tremendous regional tournament.
Yeah, he did.
Got himself into the regional finals. There's something to be said about a senior too that hasn't been here before, and that hunger and that drive. And of course, I'm speaking anecdotally right now about some of these guys who maybe I haven't seen a little bit, but there's something to be said about that hunger and drive, which comes with being your only opportunity to wrestle in Hershey. And if you're on a trip where you've made such improvements the way Sam Albright has, what are you going to do with this opportunity? And that's kind of the unknown. Obviously, they run into a tough guy in Cale Weidemoyer, who's only lost to a Pennsylvania wrestler this year, was in that opening weekend to Connor Hare. And I love the way he goes about things. He's not afraid of anybody. And you could say that about all the guys in that Faith Christian lineup. They're not afraid of anybody. They're going to go right after you. They're not going to sit back and be defensive in the way they wrestle. And that's why they're fun to watch.
They are.
Because all of those guys are like that. From the time I saw Adam Waters back at the Surge just before the season started to the time that I saw him beat Holden Garcia down at Escape the Rock, you see the same things. Guys who are going to attack. So that'll be tough for those two guys in Hunsinger and Albright as they move on there to Cale Weidemoyer. But winning that first one, like we said, that's a big one. That's one fewer match you got to wrestle on the backside if you do take that loss.
For perspective, Sam Albright was 13-7 last year.
Yeah.
Right. So, and here he is 30-9 and going into the state tournament. On the bottom half, Stephen Lynch was the surprise. I'm not saying surprise champion, but Story Buchanan had his number up until that point. Now he doesn't lose to him head to head because they both wrestled Summers, but Story Buchanan had his number previously, beat him 7-5, then 8-5. So controlling matches, right? I think he beat him 9-5 as well another time. So he's had 3 wins over him. Stephen Lynch takes advantage of the opportunity, gets a regional championship. But I think this Carmine Lenzi and Tyler Barish match, that's a number 14 versus number 11. Watch out, because I think both those guys are looking at that and saying, okay, we can see ourselves making it out to the quarterfinals here with a chance against Cameron Milheim. So I think that one, Lenzi, even though he comes in number 5 out of the Southeast region, and Tyler Barish, and for those of you who don't know Tyler Barish, he was a state medalist last year, a little banged up, had some tough goes at the regional tournament, does bounce back to finish 4th there despite some of those injuries. If he can get somewhat healthy and can get somewhat, manageable, I guess, in managing that injury, he's going to be a problem. I'm not saying he's going to beat Cameron Milheim, but I'm saying he could end up out in the quarterfinals. And also in that bottom half there, Mitch, Liam Skrinovich of Saucon Valley and Max Bloom of Lackawanna Trail. That's the number 12 versus number 17. I like that one as well. Really, the bottom half, you have Ty Watson, who's a returning state medalist. He's a guy that a lot of people are looking for. But he has lost to Story Buchanan, so that's why he ends up at number 7 in the state. But outside of that, I think it's Cameron Milheim and the rest, right? Nolan Ziegler from West Perry, former state medalist a couple years back. But really, Cameron Milheim, I'm not saying he has a clear path, but I think he has a pretty – it's not too obstructed.
I look at that matchup with the pigtail guys, Barish and Lenzi, against Stephen Lynch, and as being an opportunity where that pigtail guy could win against that regional champ. Mm-hmm. And I think either one of those guys has that potential to do that. Stephen Lynch, if I'm not mistaken, he's an Erie Prep.
Yeah, he and Cyrus Hurd are both Erie Prep guys that tuition was raised at Erie Cathedral, and they ended up going leaving there to go to Northeast.
Right. So those guys have been through that grind of a schedule that Erie Prep wrestles. So they understand what good competition is like. So even though this is only the first time Stephen Lynch has been at the state tournament, it's not like he's adverse to good competition. So that's one of those first round matchups that I'm going to be watching. Stephen Lynch against whoever comes out of that pigtail with Barish and Lenzi. I'm a big Barish fan. Last year, you kind of turned me on to what he was doing over the course of last year, and he's a guy I enjoy watching there. I think that Nolan Ziegler-Cameron Milheim matchup is going to be critical.
Yeah.
Because I really do think that's going to be closer than maybe we think. From the outside looking in, I expect Cameron Milheim to win that match, but I know Nolan Ziegler's a guy who can give some people some problems, and I think whoever comes out of that could find themselves into the semifinals, maybe even go a little farther than that, but I like Milheim here on the bottom half. You mentioned Liam Skrivanich. I think he's really good, 2-time state qualifier. He's got 2 1-point losses this year to Dagan Condomiti from Northampton. So he understands what that level of competition is like and how to be in big matches there. So he's kind of my sleeper on that bottom side. I think he could make some noise there and maybe find his way into the semifinals as well.
I mean, did I hear that correctly? You're going out on a limb and saying Cameron Milheim could make the finals?
I am going out on that limb.
And watch out for this guy.
Because otherwise it's going to break.
Watch out. Hot take here.
Hot
And I'll push back a little bit on that. I don't think Cameron Milheim and Ziegler are going to be close. Milheim beat him 7-1 at the dual tournament this past or in February. Now the prior to that, he did beat him 1-0, right? So maybe it'll be a 5-3, 5-2 match. But I do think Cameron Milheim is wrestling at a higher level than we've seen in previous times. Let's go through and look at what we got picked. I'll start with my picks here. I have Connor Hare beating Keegan Ramsey. I have Pisano beating Summers. I have Buchanan beating Celestia. I have Wyden Moyer beating Albright on the top half. And then I have Hare beating Pisano and Wyden Moyer beating Buchanan, with Hare going to the finals. What do you got on the top, Mitch?
We are a perfect match on that one.
Well, we are a perfect match regardless of
Absolutely.
what the bracket says. All right, so not a lot of difference there. On the bottom half, I have Barish beating Lindsay. I have Lynch beating Barish. I have Milheim beating Ziegler. I have Skrnovich beating Bloom. I have Watson beating Moore, with Watson coming out to the semis. Milheim to the finals, with Connor Hare winning a second straight title.
It's like you stole my bracket, Jeff.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't really pick there's not a lot of upsets there. I don't think I picked any upsets.
No, I think you're going to find a lot of close scores, but I think the guys we expect to win are going to find a way to win.
I mean,
is that first round matchup with Stephen Lynch in either Barish or Lindsay? That's where I think things can kind of get screwed up a little bit.
If there's a regional champ that's going to go down, it's I do believe it's Stephen Lynch to either Barish or Lindsay. I think that Celestia Buchanan match is maybe a little bit more of a toss-up, and I'm not saying it doesn't matter on that top quadrant, but I just think whether it's Pisano or whether it's Summers, it's Connor Hare who's coming out to the semis, right? So, I mean, it is what it is, Mitch. Let's press on to 160 pounds, Mitch, where we have a returning state champ, or not, I shouldn't say returning, a former state champ, returning state runner-up, Grant McKay, formerly of North Allegheny, now Laurel, where he's been the last 3 years, headed to Pitt. He is your top seed, 43-1. His only loss is to the number one ranked guy in AAA. That's Sean Taylor. On the bottom half, you have number 2, Hunter Homan of Grove City. I got to give Wes Phipps another shout out, but Grove City's had just a really good year this year, and they had a couple regional champs that really shined. But Hunter Homan, a junior, was 7th in the state last year. That's why you see him down on the bottom half away from Grant McKay. You also have Dagan Ross from Lackawanna Trail, who was a regional champ out of the Northeast. He comes in ranked number 4. Number 3 in the state is Zeke Dubler. He's on the bottom half. The bottom half, Mitch, I got to say, is pretty damn stacked, right? In terms of rankings, you got the number 4, number 13, number 11, 3, 7, 5, 2. That's a lot. That's a lot.
I don't want to get on this kick.
Here we go.
I'm just going to mention this.
Here we go.
Every time I see this in every bracket I go to, it feels anymore like it's not really balanced. Like one quadrant is loaded.
It's not balanced, Mitch.
It's not.
It's not.
I'm not going to complain about the PIAA seating system. I'm not.
Well, let's not call it a seeding system, because it's not a seeding system.
I think they could do better.
I think we can both agree on that. We can both agree there's a better way. I agree with you. I've got to pull you back in. 160 pounds, best first round matches, Mitch. Top half, Chase Formelli, Jefferson Morgan, number 10. Luke Fegazotto from Northwestern Lehigh, number 12. I think that's a big-time matchup. Both those guys didn't have the regional tournament maybe they wanted. Chase Formelli had to default out with some injuries, so I'm not sure whether that's going to be a deterrence to kind of what he wants to do, or maybe that's just more of a, hey, let's get healthy and prepare for this state tournament. There's a couple other first-round matches I don't necessarily have highlighted. I kind of have all right, don't miss this one. Alex Hoffman from Milton, who I know you're a big fan of, and Chase Kimmy from Jenner McLean. That should be a good one, but I really think that the top half is pretty clear-cut. I mean, I hate to say that, but I feel like the top half is, I have Jagger Gray coming out, Chase Brandenborough. If he should beat Jared Roan, I think that match with Jagger Gray is probably the best first round, or whatever round we're calling that, not the pigtail round. I think that's probably a really good matchup. Jagger Gray has been on a tear as of recently. He's a guy who's been, I think he tried out every weight above 152, and he settled in at 160, where he won a regional title. Where last year he didn't even make it to the state tournament. So I think Jagger Gray is going to have a pretty good tournament. Colin Hearn is from Conneaut is kind of the guy I have circled as like this guy can surprise you, right? He was a state qualifier the last 2 years, but outside of that, he hadn't done a ton. Like he lost to Grant McKay. He has a win over Caleb Butterfield, but overall, like, I mean, we just haven't seen him a whole lot, right? So I think this is really a good chance for him to prove it. And I think, honestly, he can make it to the semifinals.
I think so, too. I actually have him in the semifinals. Not to get ahead of myself here, because we don't know a lot about him. Those are the guys that scare me the most when we get down to the Giants Center. As we see Claudia, hopefully she's not going after a pillow.
She's good. She's good.
Yeah, we'll block her. Those are the guys that scare me the most. The guys that we just don't know a lot about. The guys who have seen that upper level competition, you kind of have them figured out. You kind of know what you're going to get from them. These guys who maybe haven't been there, who don't have some of those results of some of the guys on the bottom half of the bracket, those are the ones that concern me, and those are the ones that I think tend to throw the wrench into the way the bracket is supposed to shake out, so to speak. So that quarterfinal, which I have picked with Hearn and Gray there, that's going to be one of the more must-watch matches for me, because I think that's going to be very interesting. But yeah, like you said there, I like what Jagger Gray has done. He seems to have settled in comfortably to where he is right now. I like Colin Hearn because he's been here a couple times before. He's wrestling a first-time qualifier in Chase Wenrick, who I really like and I think is really on the come up there for Lewisburg, but he's maybe not quite there just yet. I do like Alex Hoffman. He's a very confident kid. Doesn't have a ton of results to show for it. He had a really good week in early January where he beat Gabe Belga, I think, from Cumberland. So he's got some results on his ledger this year, and you just have to see if these kids are capable at this level, because you just don't know at this point.
No, I mean you don't. I mean, perfect example: Colin Hearn and Chase Wenrick. They don't have any common opponents. Which, I mean, at this point, it's hard to find wrestlers that are going to meet head to head that don't have one single common opponent. But so let's go through, before we go through our picks. Let's go down on the bottom half. First round matches that I like: Joey LaPena from Notre Dame, Vito Gentile from Reynolds. I think that's a good match. LaPena on paper is 18-10, and you're like, well, how's this guy here, right? But I mean, that's 10 losses from Notre Dame, and of course he came back into the season late. I like Dagan Ross a lot. I think he's in a good position there. The one match that I have as a can't miss, you cannot miss this one. Okay, there's one in every weight. 160, it's this one. Luke Sogalski from Faith Christian versus Andrew McMulligan from Huntington. This is much watch TV right here. McMulligan, let's put it in perspective. He's going to tiebreaker twice with Zeke Dubler, right? That's saying something, right? I really like him a lot. He's a guy who was injured all of last year, was a state qualifier his freshman year during that COVID year. Comes back. He's now at Huntington, where he's had a really good year. He's had some good wins, right? Of course, if you're close with Zeke Dubler, you're doing something right. He comes in ranked number 5. Sogalski, on the other hand, comes in ranked number 7. He was second out of the region, second trip to Hershey. So going back to what you like, these are two guys that have been to Hershey before, two guys that are kind of poised to make a splash here, because I do think the winner there, they're setting up. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say they're setting up nice, but they're have a better chance against Hunter Homan, I think, than Grant McKay. So yeah, what do you like on the bottom half?
So you mentioned Sogalski and McMonagle there. I really like the Justice Hockenberry Folk against Zeke Dubler. I think Zeke's the favorite going into that match. But Justice has been here twice before. He's really sprouted up over the last couple years and kind of grown into this weight class. He's a guy I like that I've seen in the past year. They wrestled up at Montgomery 2 years ago in the state duels preliminary round. So he's a guy I like to watch. I think that first round match is going to be interesting to watch, but I like Zeke Dubler coming out of there. Deegan Ross is an interesting guy because he's a little bit of one of those guys we don't know a whole lot about. And I say that because of this. He hasn't wrestled a returning state qualifier since December 28th.
Oof.
The 160 weight class in District 4 in the Northeast Regional was full of a bunch of new guys that didn't
Yeah.
really have kind of that established veteran there. And it really was a toss-up through the 3 weeks of the postseason, leading into this week. And he wrestled it well. I mean, he earned that win coming out of there. But like I said, he hasn't wrestled a state qualifier since December 28th. So I'm curious to see how he'll react on this stage and at this level as well. That quarterfinal matchup, whether it's Sugalski, whether it's McMonagle against Hunter Homan, I really like Hunter Homan going down through his results. Here's a number for you, Jeff. Hunter Homan is 10-1 against state qualifiers this year.
Yeah, he's solid. He's solid as hell. He's been just a kind of like a journeyman, just a workhorse. Has a couple, and look at some of his wins, right? He has a win over Dubler. His only loss is to Grant McKay, right? So I do really think he's solid, and that's why I have him going to the finals. Let's go through and look at our brackets. I'll start at the top. Grant McKay, I have him beating Chase Vermelli. I have Alex Hoffman beating Chance Kimmy. I have Colin Hearn beating Chase Wenrick. I have Jagger Gray beating Chase Brandenburg. A lot of chases here. We gotta switch up the names here. I have Gray beating Hearn. I have McKay beating Hoffman. I have McKay beating Gray. Going into the finals on the bottom half, I have Ross beating LaPenna. I have Dubler beating JHF. I have McMonagle beating Sugalski. I have Homan beating Masood, with Homan wrestling Dubler in the semis, with Homan going to the finals.
Yeah, we're pretty much in
yeah, but you have Hearn going instead of Gray, right?
Yeah, I have Kimmy beating Hoffman in the first round. Again, that's one I just don't know a whole lot about how Alex Hoffman's going to.
Jim Beach is going to be happy. Good for you.
I have Hearn in the semis there against Grant McKay, but like I said, that quarterfinal, Hearn and Gray should be fantastic to watch, I think. But I really do like Homan coming out of the bottom half of the bracket there. He's got that 8-4 win over Zeke Dubler this year. So I have him going into the final against Grant McKay.
Daniel P. sent a message in the comments. I agree. He says, I think the winner of McMonagle and Sugalski could ride momentum over Homan. When you get a big win like that, you've seen it a lot of times where you're, especially the fact that, you get that big match under your belt, right? And then you can kind of propel from that and move forward. I agree. That's certainly possible. Anything's possible in Hershey. We know that. Let's go up to 172 pounds, Mitch, where at the top we have Caleb Close, who is the number 5 ranked guy in the state. He is your top seed by virtue of winning the region, but also being a returning state medalist. On the bottom half, you have Connor McChesney from Fort LaBeouf, who picked a good time to beat Jalen Wagner of Reynolds. He won the Northwest region. He is a returning state qualifier. Also on the bottom half, you have Adam Waters, the number 1 ranked wrestler in the state, Mitch's favorite wrestler in the world. He is a freshman from Faith Christian. Pretty damn good. We'll just leave it at that. On the top half, you have Caleb Close. You have a guy by the name of Holden Garcia, returning state champion. And you also have Caden Fink. I wouldn't say a surprise champion. The Northeast region, no shade, they just weren't very good at 172, Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, when Wes Barnes went down for the season with an injury, which I believe he just had surgery the other day, so here's hoping he gets well, is ready to go at Clarion. Garrett Garcia didn't come out this year. I mean, he tried to wrestle. He weighed in at district duels. It just wasn't in the cards after the ACL tear during football season. And then you had Jersey Shore moving up to AAA, so Hayden Packer wasn't there. So it really kind of thinned out the upper weights a little bit in District 4 in the Northeast region. But Caden Fink has kind of proved himself a little bit. I still think he's probably in that 10 to 15 range in terms of the state rankings. But this is a kid who put on 30 pounds of muscle over the offseason, really made a conscious effort to get into the weight room and get stronger. And it's shown. It's worked out for him. And he gets to roll around with Connor Hare on a daily basis. So he knows what competition's all about.
That does certainly make you better. Taking a beating every day will certainly make you better over the long run. Some of the first round matches that I have highlighted here, Mitch, Shamir Davenport from Belmont Charter. I feel like he's been around forever, been a regional place winner multiple times before, but he comes in ranked number 21 in the state. Robbie Schneider of Lackawanna Trail. That's an interesting one for me because Davenport He is regional 6th, regional 7th, regional 6th, but he makes it to the state tournament. Schneider, on the other hand, he's a returning state 5th place finisher. He just hasn't had a great year, right? I mean, he took that loss to Cole Shoup from Warrior Run, which I was kind of shocked by that. And now he sets it up. If he wins, he'll have Caleb Close, right? Now, can he win that one? Absolutely, he can. They're both state medalists. In fact, Robbie Schneider finished a little bit higher on the podium. Holden Garcia and Waylon Whaler from St. Mary's. Whaler is a guy. The St. Mary's team, man, they're just chippy. They battle. I mean, I just don't know if it's that Northwest region or what in the water. They just really are grinders, and I wouldn't look past him. Holden Garcia, having those couple losses to Adam Waters, I think may play with it in his mind a little bit, especially considering he's trying to become a second state champion here. Jalen Wagner and Lucas Lawler, that's the number 1 matchup of the first round, number 4 versus number 8. I think the winner there makes it to the semifinals.
I agree. I agree with you there. The Waylon Whaler Holden Garcia match is interesting to me just to see how Whaler handles that. I mean, he's a senior. They're coming down from AAA. He's got 98 career wins, so the he's trying to get 2 here down here in Hershey, number 1 to get on the podium, but to get to that magic 100 mark is as well. I'm really just curious to see how Holden Garcia wrestles. I mean, I don't think you expect a returning state champ from Pennsylvania to come into the state tournament with 7 losses on his ledger. Now, obviously, of course, they wrestle a great schedule there at Notre Dame, so not too surprised that he might take a couple losses. But I want to see just how he's handling things mentally. Maybe his thought process is, hey, listen, I only got to get at him once, and it's only got to be the last one of the year. Maybe he's figured some things out. It's not like there's been a huge gap between the two of them at this point. I just want to see how he's wrestling. If he's free and easy out there, if he's letting loose, or if he's a little timid, which I don't expect him to be. So that's why I want to watch that match and just kind of see how he's wrestling and where he's at right now. But I agree with you. Wagner Lawler is a great first round match, and I think that guy comes out into the semis.
So you have the winner there also going to the semifinals? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Dan, and I want to mention Dan Haubert from Palisades. He's a guy I've seen at the top hat the last couple years, and he's kind of hot and cold sometimes. I just never know what I'm going to get from him, but there's an immense talent there within that kid as a wrestler, and I think he's going to give Caden Fink everything he wants in that first round match.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think he's not going to go away if he does beat Jesse Orban. I do have him beating Jesse Orban to get there. If there's a regional champion I want to go after, it's Caden Fink. Again, that's just when you have to look at all the other regional champs there. On the bottom half, that's Brock Colville and Tommy Cohener from Southern Hullington. If Tommy if he's healthy, he had an injury default after to Kyle Scott, freshman from Tyrone. If he's healthy, watch out. Brock Colville is certainly, you look at the Northwest region there, and it's stacked, right? Colville is a returning state qualifier, has a loss to Whaler, but he's behind 3 other really high quality wrestlers. I mean, when you have 4 of the guys ranked top 10 in the state, that kind of shows you where you're at as a region, and that's where Brock Colville I think is at. Him and Tommy Cohener again should be a really good match if Cohener is actually healthy. I do like Colville there. Higley and Scott. Scott's a tough freshman with tree trunk for legs. He can. I mean, he's coached by Quentin Wright, so that obviously goes a long way. I do like him in that first match. Keep an eye on Gabe Davis and Isaac Lisinski from Burrell. That's number 12 versus number 13 in the pigtail round. So that's one of the better pigtail matches is Gabe Davis versus Lisinski. Gabe Davis making his second trip to Hershey. And for Lisinski, this is his first trip, but he's had that Burrell team, man, they're battle tested. So those are some of the ones I had circled. Mitch, do you want to go through and look at what you have picked? I think you kind of already touched on a few of them.
Yeah, I mean, that match between Koval and Cohenauer, like you mentioned, is a really good pigtail match there. But it seems like every time we talk about one of these really good pigtail matches, they're just running into an absolute stud. It doesn't like there's that opportunity to carry that momentum that might run them into the quarters or into the semis, and you're running right into Adam Waters off of that match there. I want to keep an eye on Mason Higley.
Okay.
Kid who's really grown over the last couple of years from Towanda. We know Bill Sexton teams are always very well coached, and kids are always in good position. They don't make a ton of mistakes. They might get beat, but they're not going to beat themselves for the most part. So keep an eye on him in that matchup with Kyle Scott there. Cole Shoup, I have no idea what to expect from this kid. I mean,
how did he beat Rob? Like, how did he get there?
I wish I had an answer for you. You know, I was down in Bethlehem for the AAA and just kind of watching the results. And I said, what did Cole Shoup just do? Like, I mean, and nobody in Warrior Run is surprised because, you know, he's the typical hardest working kid in the room like that. I don't think he's got immense talent. He's just going to outwork you. So I never know kind of what to expect from him, but there's some talent in there that couples with that hard work and a good schedule that they've.
Well, I mean, I don't want to like rain on his parade, but like he lost to Robbie Schneider by tech fall on December 9th, right?
Yep.
Or December 10th. He lost to him 20-4. He beats him 9-4 a few months later. I mean, that to me is like what's happening here, right? I mean, you look at his I mean, he's got 60 wins in his career, or 52, I'm sorry, 52 wins in his career. I mean, he's not – I'm not saying like there's some crazy, you know, guy who was not any good who made it to the state tournament. He's good, right? But just looking at his results, I mean, I wasn't expecting him to flip a tech fall into a pretty convincing decision, right? So
he's one of those guys that you look at and say, okay, he'll find his way into a sectional final maybe. You know, a low placer in the district tournament, and he'll have a nice run that ends probably in the regional tournament. Not a guy that ends up in the regional final, you know, beating a returning state fifth place finisher who's ranked third in the state. You know, that's not what you expect out of him, and he's outperformed the expectations. All the credit in the world to him because he went out and did it.
Yeah, and you know, that first round matchup he has with Braden Welsh. I mean, I'm picking Welsh, but I mean, if he wrestles like he did against Schneider, like he should win that match. You know, it's like,
yeah, who the hell knows? Like it's one of those things because you and I both know, Jeff, and everybody who's listening to this, it's who comes out ready. If you do come out ready, you're going to get beat down there, and it might be by a kid who's ranked 22nd. Because that's just how good Pennsylvania is.
You've brought me along to the Kyle Scott Mason Higley match. At first I thought, you know, that's Scott's, but I forgot the Bill Sexton thing. That goes a long way. That has a lot of points. You know,
it's the goatee power. It really is.
It's something. Kyle Scott and Mason Higley. I'll highlight that one. I'll get my yellow highlighter out and highlight that one and add it to my list. Let's go through what we got here. So for me on the top half, I have Schneider and Close with Close winning. That can flip around easily though too.
I'll interject here real quick.
Please interrupt me.
That I like the schedule that Bald Eagle area wrestles more than Lackawanna Trail, which is why that kind of flipped the switch for me.
Yeah, and Lackawanna, I mean, all these football players, they had a long season in football, so I know a lot of them, it took a while for them to get back. Whaler and Garcia, I have Garcia winning that one. Wagner and Lawler, I do have Wagner winning that one. Not a whole lot of confidence, though. I have Halbert beating Orban with Fink beating Halbert. So I have Garcia beating Close, Wagner beating Fink, Garcia beating Wagner. On the bottom half, I have Adam Waters beating Colville. I have Scott beating Higley. I have Welsh beating Shoup. I have McChesney beating Gabe Davis, with McChesney beating Welsh, Waters beating Scott, and Waters beating McChesney, and Waters over Garcia. Same thing?
Just
or
a couple deviations for me.
Right, let's hear it.
I think Dan Halbert can beat Caden Fink in that first round match.
So you think Halbert's going to beat Orban and then beat Fink?
I do, yeah. And then
who do you have, Wagner or Lawler?
The semis against Garcia, with Garcia coming out.
Okay. Bottom half, anything different?
Bottom half, I think Mason Higley can win that first round match and then lose to Adam Waters there. I do like Welsh to give McChesney everything he's got. And I've got Welsh coming out into the semis before a loss to Waters.
Listen, McChesney, I mean, he's in a tough little quadrant there. Outside of Shoup, your boy, McChesney's going to have Davis or Lisinski, both, 12 and 13 respectively in the state. Now, McChesney, again, he picked the right time to win because had he not, he would have been on that same. Well, actually, I don't know. I like if McChesney on the top half there, I think he's in the semifinals. It's an easier route where Wagner is than McChesney. But, McChesney's a stud. He just hadn't been able to figure out Jalen Wagner for a little bit. Now, Waters, he dominated McChesney at the state tournament, in the state finals, so I don't see there's any issues there. But all right, I'm cool with that, Mitch. Let's bump up to 189 pounds, where we've got some dude named Rune Lawrence, who is absolutely incredible. Go ahead, Mitch. Please interrupt me.
Is he any good?
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's decent. He's got 3 losses on the year. I don't know what's that about. Rune Lawrence, returning state champion, 2-time state champion, is gracing us with his presence at 189 pounds. We also, on the bottom half, have Jackson Zimmerman of Brookville, comes in ranked number 5. Jake Guilfoyle had to be one of the most impressive wrestlers of the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. He's been wrestling out of his mind. Absolutely dominates a very deep southeast region that included returning state runner-up Jacob Jones and Jacob Scheib of Tri-Valley. So in that quadrant, right, on the top half, Rune Lawrence, if the rankings hold, he's going to wrestle either Jacob Jones, who's who's the guy he wrestled in the state finals last year, or Carter Chamberlain from Clearfield, who was 8th in the state last year. So that's a pretty damn good quadrant there. My best first round match is definitely Carter Chamberlain and Jacob Jones, and then a tied Magnus Lloyd, Jacob Scheib. So those are my best first round matches at 189. I'm sure you copied me. I'm sure those are the same ones you had as well, right?
I don't know a whole ton about Magnus Lloyd, so I'm curious.
He was on our national freestyle duels teams. Shout out Magnus Lloyd. His grandfather was a table worker for us. Shout out Magnus Lloyd. Sorry.
Yeah. So I don't know a whole lot about him. So I was curious to hear kind of your reasoning behind looking forward to that match with Jacob Scheib. I'm with you 100% on Carter Chamberlain and Jacob Jones. I've seen Carter Chamberlain over the years. That Clearfield team battled with Williamsport the last couple of years in district duels because the 4-9 sub-region there. So I've seen a little bit of him to understand kind of where his level is. Not only was he state 8th last year, state 8th in AAA, so to me, that means something a little bit just because your depth in AAA is a little deeper than it is on the AA side. So that's a really great first round matchup that it feels like it's not going to matter a whole lot because you're running into Rune Lawrence. If I could see the rest of this top half of the bracket as a standalone on the bottom half, that would make, I think, for a much better tournament.
Yeah.
Just because that having those guys battling it out there is going to be must see. It's going to be must watch to see who gets the pleasure of running into Rune Lawrence.
You make it sound so lovely, like going for a nice stroll in the park. So reason Magnus Lloyd. One, Magnus Lloyd, his name's Magnus. That to me is pretty cool in itself. He comes in ranked number 6 in the state. Again, there's no other person that knows the state like I do. State rankings that we have are the best. There's no competition. So to me, a number 6 versus number 4 indicates a pretty good matchup. Magnus Lloyd was in AAA last year where he had a good season, but he's really, you look at some of the wins that he's had this year, he has a lot of, you're a big guy on looking at the quality of wins that he has. Let's just go through the hit list. He's beat Vitaly Daniels, who's up at 215 pounds. He's beat Brendan Morgan from Central Valley. He's beat Rocco Serafini. He's beat Sam Milligan. He's beat Ty Holland. He's beaten Carter Chamberlain, state medalist. So, he's got some good wins under his belt. Jacob Scheib, he's coming off a loss there to Guilfoyle. So I think that it's a time that – now, I picked Scheib. Okay, you probably thought I picked Lloyd. I did pick Scheib, so Jim Beach is not going to be happy with me. But talk about Paul Renner from Honesdale. The Northeast went kind of nuts because there's not a lot of depth there in the Northeast. And, unfortunately, Paul Renner's the regional champion, comes in ranked number 18 in the state.
Yeah, I think – I don't know how to say this without it sounding bad. I think he was just the guy who was able to run through that. it wasn't a great weight class. For the most part, Jake Baburski, who is the runner up there, is a really nice wrestler, a really nice depth piece on a good dual meet team. He's found a way to win here the last couple weeks. Caden Rodarmels had a really nice season. He's Loyal Sox first state qualifier, I think, since 2016. Cray McCracken. It just wasn't that upper echelon weight class. Paul Renner wrestled very well during that regional tournament. He earned the win there, but it's kind of like I felt about 160 and Deegan Ross coming in out of that 160 bracket. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I definitely look at it and say, okay, does Lucas Miller or Jacob Leahy beat Paul Renner? Number 16, number 13 with Lucas Miller and Jacob Leahy. I still think Renner it could potentially get out to the quarterfinals. It's not like there's a top 10 guy sitting there waiting for him, or he's waiting for a top 10 guy to come out after having a match. So I still think he's in a good spot, right? I do have Lucas Miller beating Jacob Leahy and Miller coming out to the quarterfinals. Miller had an okay regional tournament, but he is a returning state qualifier, so I'm with you. I like the guys that have been there, quote, before. On the bottom half, Jason Singer, Faith Christian, and Britton Spangle from Glendale, I think is going to be a good one. Freshman versus a senior. Singer is number 9 in the state. Spangle is number 15. I do like that one. Spangle is making his second trip to Hershey. Singer has had some really good results for Faith Christian. So this will be a good test for him with a favorable matchup against Jackson Zimmerman from Brookville. I like Jackson Zimmerman a lot. I think he's just a fundamentally good wrestler from Brookville, like they always are. You just change his name with anybody else from Brookville from 189 up. Like, that's just how Brookville is. There's some interesting first-round matches on that bottom half. I think that Rodermel and Roman Holmes, I really like Roman Holmes a lot. I'm pretty big on him. He pinned Vitaly Daniels this year, made it to the Panther Holiday finals against Tucker Hogan. So I do think that he has maybe a little bit more, he's been challenged a little bit more this year than Rodermel from a Loyal Sock, who they don't see a ton. But ultimately, I think Jake Guilfoyle is sitting pretty. I think he's going to make it to the finals, personally. If you don't have anything else to add on the bottom half, Mitch, we can go through our picks if you want.
I do want to say we talked
Please.
about Jake Guilfoyle a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember if it was with Dustin on here, and talking about that guy who wasn't a full 189, but it allowed him to be strong. It allowed him to kind of eat what he wants and just really be strong. And I mentioned the last 2 state champions at this weight class, Cale Krebs and Isaac Corey, who were in very similar situations. That's why I like Jake Guilfoyle, on top of then coming out of a really good southeastern region as the champion. So I like where he's been. He's been here before. He understands the atmosphere and all of that stuff. That's
well, does he though? He missed weight last year. He missed weight. He didn't wrestle.
Right. So
he was there, right? I mean, I do like Guilfoyle. Is Claudia humping? What are you doing?
No, I'm having problems with my earbuds, and I'm. So
that's unfortunate. Look what he did to Jacob Scheib. I mean, he beat him 13-0. He almost tech falled Jacob Scheib, who is a state medalist, right? And then he beats Jake Jones 6-0. He shut out 2 guys that are number 3 and now number 4 in the state, respectively. So yes, Guilfoyle is he's all that in a bag of chips. Now, he was at states 2 years prior to that, I think. Yeah, 138 pounds. So, I mean, yes, he's been to Hershey many times before. Picks. I've got Cale Bastian beating Quade Bowden, with Rune Lawrence getting the win there. I have Jacob Jones beating Carter Chamberlain. I have Scheib beating Lloyd. I have Miller beating Leahy, and then Miller beating Renner. And I have Scheib beating Miller, and Lawrence beating Jones. Lawrence over Scheib for into the finals. On the bottom half, I have Guilfoyle beating Ryan Welka. Although I really do think Welka and Presnell is going to be a battle. Both those guys are pretty well tested. I have Holmes beating Rodermel. I have Josh Ryan beating Baborski. And I have Zimmerman beating Singer. and I have Zimmerman beating Ryan. I have Guilfoyle beating Holmes, and Guilfoyle beating Zimmerman. Lawrence over Guilfoyle in the finals. What do you got, Mitch?
We are simpatico on that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I will say I do like Caden Rodarm a little bit. He's super quick, which is what
You've
I
already
like.
said you liked him. Are you picking him over Holmes?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm just saying keep an eye on it.
He's a nice kid, but I don't have him winning. Wow. How nice is he then, Mitch?
That's a good question. He hasn't been on this level before. They don't wrestle with super great schedule, so I'm just saying keep an eye. That's my District 4 bias. Just keep an eye.
At least you can be honest.
Absolutely.
215 pounds. 215 pounds. You want to talk about District 4 bias? Austin Johnson is really good at wrestling. 215, the top half is stacked. I mean, is that an understatement? That the top half is absolutely out of this world. You have Tucker Painter, number 10, versus Miska Young, Port Allegheny, number 16. I think that's a great first-round matchup. The best first-round matchup, again, every weight has one. I'm going to call these again. I know it's cheating, but Dante Burns, Conwell Egan versus Grant Matthews of Berlin. I think that's a number 7 versus number 8. I really do like that one a lot. But I also really like Mark Effendine, Faith Christian versus Vitaly Daniels, because these are you cannot have two different styles of bodies than Mark Effendine and Vitaly Daniels. Vitaly Daniels is just shredded. Mark Effendine he's just not shredded. And I think, but he's so good. He's so good. And you can't, you just can't look past that. So I think those are two really good first round matches. The Southeast was pretty stacked. You had Brody Klein, you had Mark Effendine, you had Dante Burns. And Dante Burns 2 years ago was a state qualifier. Vitaly Daniels was a state qualifier last year. So I think those are really good matchups. And I like Matthews. Grant Matthews was 7th in the region last year. This is his first trip. So I think this is a good first round matchup with him and Dante Burns. What else do you have on the top half, Mitch, that I didn't mention?
I just want to bring Paul Myers said in your first show about the Conwell Egan kids. They're tough and they're gritty, and I could not agree more. Those guys always seem to give the best run to some of the best kids. Even if they may not win, I like to watch those kids wrestle. So I like Dante Burns in that first match. I saw Mark Effendian down at State Duels, and I kind of said, wait, that's him? Because I wasn't expecting that. Like you said, they are two different body types. Man, that kid's like a fire plug. It's hard to move him around.
He's got a great slide by.
Yes. Yeah. He's really good at what he does. And it's not flashy. It's just really, really solid. And that's a terrible word. It's a very nondescript word, but that's just what he is.
I get what you're saying. And to go back to Conwell Egan, I mean, Chucky Connor is a big reason for that, right? State champ from Pennsbury, just an absolute stud, and a really, really damn good coach. I've always been a big fan of Chucky Connor. On the bottom half, Mitch, Brennan Morgan is the Southwest Regional Champion. I like him a lot. He's a guy who comes in ranked number 4. He was a state qualifier last year. So you have a lot of qualifiers, not a lot of guys that have been on the podium. In fact, the only guys on the podium at 215 pounds were Abe Keep and Austin Johnson. All the other guys have just been qualifiers. So I think this is a time when you're going to see a lot of these guys make jumps. And you see that a lot with 215 pounds as upperclassmen move into that weight. Braden McFetridge of Cranberry, number 15. Seth Ross, Lackawanna Trail, number 12. I love that matchup. It's not quite the Dante Burns and Grant Matthews or Mark Effendine and Vitaly Daniels, but it's pretty close. Seth Ross from Lackawanna Trail is, he's really good. He was a regional 5th place finisher last year, but this is his first trip to Hershey. So I like that one. And of course you have a guy named Pitzer here, right? I mean, he's not Dayton, but he is Pickle. Dylan Pitzer is on the bottom half there. Chad Beller is his first opponent. Winner gets Brody Klein, who I like at number 5, but beatable. I think Pitzer could win that one. What are your thoughts down on the bottom half, Mitch?
Yeah, I really like Brody Klein on the bottom half there. He had a win over Jackson Zimmerman at State Duels. He had a win in Ultimate Tiebreaker over Mark Effendian. at state duels. He's got a win over Jared Blobe, I believe, at state duels as well.
Yep.
Win over Tucker Painter here in recent weeks. So this is a guy who's been battle tested, and if I'm somebody who likes guys that are battle tested, that's somebody that I like. And I want to ask you this question because as I listened through the first show, and listen to some of the things that you've said here, it really feels like your thoughts on how you view the Berks Catholic team, the Berks Catholic kids, have kind of shifted since that state duels. I'm curious if you kind of saw what you wanted to see out of that group down at state duels.
I can't tell. Are you being sarcastic or are you being like genuine? Because like
No, I'm genuinely serious about. I'm genuine.
Because I mean, that was the running thing. Is like,
Sure.
Jeff. Look, Berks Catholic. Yes, I saw what I needed to see at the team state tournament from an individual perspective. Looking at it from an individual perspective, maybe not a Adam Waters or just a Rune Lawrence type guy, right? Not a guy who just you're like, my God, this guy's a phenomenal wrestler, right? But they have a lot of really, really just above average, hard nosed, very good wrestlers. So and they're so complete. So I would say all of them, all their guys that are here, like they're all kind of in that same little tier, if you will, where they're gonna battle, they're gonna win some matches, all the way from Chris Smith all the way up to Brody Klein. So yes, I mean, they were certainly tested at Hershey, and yes, I saw what I needed to see, and I am on board with Berks Catholic, if that's what you wanted to hear, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we said in kind of the lead up to it, show me something, like prove something to me, and I know I felt like I came away thinking much more highly of them than I did going in, and it feels like you felt the same way. So that's why I was genuinely curious just about how you perceive these guys, especially as you're doing rankings, and how maybe that's altered your thought process while doing the rankings.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely moved up. I mean, there's been a lot of guys that ended up, taking some jumps ahead. And Brody Klein, Brody Klein has always kind of been there. Brody Klein was a state qualifier the last 2 years, so he was expected to be where he was at. The matchup that you brought up, Seth Ross and Brendan Morgan, these are two guys that I think should they meet, which I do expect them to. Brendan Morgan's a young kid. He's only a junior from Central Valley, state qualifier last year as a sophomore. Had some really good matches there. Lost to Seth Stewart from Brockway 6-2, but had some good wins this year, kind of in between weights. He went up to 215. Him and Vitaly Daniels both elected to go up from 189 to 215. On that, so and Abe Keep and Dan Church. We can't not talk about 215 without talking about Dan Church and Abe Keep. Those two have been back and forth. I think this is. I'll have to pull it up here real quick, but I do believe that this was the fifth meeting between them. I'm tell you 1 second.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
This was the 6th. That was the 6th meeting between them. Right now, Church is leading that 4-2, but Keep had won the last two. So I think that can probably flip around. The top half is just stacked. So let's just go through there. I have Tucker Painter beating Miska Young. I have Dante Burns beating Matthias. I have Daniels beating Effendian. I have Danny Church beating Christian McChesney from Greensburg-Salem. I have Brendan Morgan beating Jared Blobe. Blobe beating Brungart from Penns Valley. And I have Seth Ross beating McFetridge. I have Abe Keep beating Cole Yonkin. Shout out Cole Yonkins, had a good year this year. Really good year. Brody Klein. And I keep on saying Dayton Pitzer. Dylan Pitzer, I do like Klein in that, but Pitzer's he's a Pitzer, right? Any differences in your first round?
I like Effendian to beat Daniels in that first round. Like I said, it's just a guy that's never seems to be out of position, and I like a guy who's not going to give up a ton of points down here in the state tournament, because we see so many times it comes down to one move, 1 point, one takedown. So that's why I like him there in that first round match. I like McFetridge over Seth Ross a little bit. I'm a little concerned about a couple of Seth Ross's losses on the year. He took a 6-2 loss to Ryan Casella of South Williamsport. That was way back in early December, so I shouldn't think all that much of it. But when he's seen some better competition, it hasn't gone very well for him this year, so that's why I like McFetridge in that first match.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to battle tested. I mean, these are two guys that have no common opponents, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, so that obviously doesn't bode well when you're talking about trying to find where they're going to be at. I think that's a pretty wide open match. Number 15 versus number 12. I have Johnson beating Burns, Church beating Daniels, Morgan beating Ross, Keep beating Klein, Keep over Morgan, Johnson over Church, Johnson over Keep. You got anything different?
No, not really. We're on the same page with all of those.
Well, do you have the same semifinalists? Do you have Church and Johnson and Morgan and Keep?
Yes,
Oh,
I
I
do.
thought you had Ross or
No,
McFetridge.
I have Ross losing to McFetridge.
Oh, so you don't even okay.
Yeah, in that first match there. I do like Brendan Morgan because he's found a little bit of a role since the turn of the new year. I think he's won 25 in a row, and 19 of them have been by fall. So he's found something, and he's carried it with him since the turn of the new year. So I think that semifinal, I like Abraham Keep in that semifinal, but I think that could be interesting.
I agree. I think Abe Keep is he's a stud. So is Dan Church. I kind of wish that Dan Church was on the bottom half, so we give him a chance to potentially get to the state finals. Turning the page to 285 pounds, we got Riley Robel, returning state champion from Bishop McDevitt, headed to where's he headed? James Madison for football. On the bottom half, we have Emmanuel Ulrich from Mifflinburg, undefeated Emmanuel Ulrich. These are the top two guys in the state. One was first, one was third in the state last year, so a really good 1 and 2 there. But you also have Gunnar Singleton from Huntington, who was the Southwest champion. Aiden Compton, number 3 in the state. Compton actually pinned Singleton at the team state tournament. He comes in ranked number 3. Also in the bottom half, you have Owen Reber of Berks Catholic, another guy who I'm pretty high on. He's had a really good end of the season. On the top half, though, outside of Robel, it's pretty wide open. If I'm being honest, you got a returning state qualifier in Wilson Spires. You have Brady Ewing from Tyrone. You have Andrew Wolf, a surprise. I can't believe Andrew Wolf was a third out of Northeast. I really, really like Daniel Williams from Glendale. He's a freshman. Him and Mason Nelson should be a good first-round matchup. I actually have Williams winning that. Charles Shepard, this is an interesting one. Returning state 8th. He had some up and down results this year. He's 40 and 11, and he was a state 8th place finisher last year. So that, to me, him and Joey Baronic is probably the best first-round matchup. That's a number 9 versus number 11, Mitch. You see anything else on that bottom or top half?
No, Braden Ewing's the guy that I really like in that top half. I mean, going all the way back to the Panther Holiday Classic, he was 5'4" with Emmanuel Ulrich. I think very highly of Emmanuel Ulrich. So that tells me a lot about where he is. I like Mason Nelson. He's a big kid who doesn't get moved around a lot, but if you get him on the mat, you have an opportunity to score some points there with him or to get a fall. So that's a really interesting matchup with a senior and a freshman with Mason Nelson and Daniel Williams down there.
Looking at the bottom half here, Mitch, Compton, Aiden Compton, Gavin Thompson, number 3 versus 13. Singleton, I really like Gunner. He's huge. He's absolutely a house. I like the Bruce Hartman and Justice Troutman match. That to me, 19 and 20. Bruce Hartman is another one of those Berwick guys, Mitch, that I'm just like, at the start of the season, I thought he was going to be a top 10 guy. Then he had some losses, and then, he ends up finishing 4th in the Northeast region. I never would have expected Andrew Wolf to beat him, but here we are.
Yeah, it's funny because after the district tournament, I talked to Emmanuel Ulrich about hopefully getting a good sweat with Bruce Hartman at the regional tournament, and the two never saw each other because of Andrew Wolf pulling that bit of a surprise there against Hartman, I think in the quarterfinals of the regional tournament. I'm happy to see Bruce Hartman got through because I think this is a really good kid who's got a potential to make things happen down in Hershey. So just because he's coming out of that pigtail match, don't sleep on him.
Yeah, I mean, look at Bruce Hartman's results. I mean, he beat Jonah Hauser, he lost to Jonah Hauser from Lackawanna Trail, but then he ends up beating Gavin Thompson in sudden victory, a guy I know you're high on, and he beat Gunnar Tribally from Danville 6-3. The fact that Gunnar Tribally's not even here, he didn't even make it to the regionals. That's how wacky the District 4 tournament was. Say it again?
He didn't get out of the sectional tournament. I think he may have gotten banged up at sectionals.
Okay. Well, regardless, he's had some. Bruce Hartman's had some interesting results, right? Loses to Wolf by fall, loses to Nittinger from Athens. Had some injuries earlier this year, but I mean, he's got some really good wins. So I think that's a good match there. I do really like Owen Reber of Berks Catholic. Comes in ranked number 8 in the state. He's had some good results towards the end of the season. So let's go through. And also, this is another one I forgot to mention. Kristen Flaherty from Keystone Oaks and Peyton Wenzel of Upper Dolphin. I do really like that one too. 2 seniors that are looking to get on the podium for the first time. Actually, both of them are making their first trip here to the state tournament. Both of them have been close before. So let's go through picks. I have Wilson Spires beating Brad Miller. I have Riley Rebel beating Wilson Spires. I have Brady Ewing beating Andrew Wolf. I have Williams beating Nelson. I have Neely beating Shepard. Shepard beating Baronic. That can flip. Heavyweight's so hard to predict, Mitch. I mean, because realistically, Neely's undefeated at 33-0. I still don't know if that's, I don't know. We'll just leave it at that. Gunnar Singleton, I have him beating Bruce Hartman, so I have Hartman over Troutman. I have Compton over Thompson. I have Reber over Mauserick, and I have Ulrich over Flaherty. Flaherty over Wenzel. You got anything different?
Mauserick over Reber is the only one that I have different than that. Otherwise, we're pretty spot on.
Going into the semifinals, I have Robel over Ewing. I do have Neely over Williams. I'm not confident in that. That's a 5 versus a 7. I have Compton over Singleton. Compton dominated him at the state tournament, at the team tournament. Like, it wasn't, I was expecting that to be really close, considering it was like a number 3 versus number 4 in the state, and it wasn't. It just wasn't there. So I do expect Compton to win that one. I have Ulrich over Reber. And I have Ulrich going to the finals over Compton, Robel over Neely, with Robel winning it. I'm assuming you have the same.
I have the same thing. Aiden Compton's a guy I really like. When I saw him a couple times this year, I saw him in the Bethlehem Catholic match. I also saw him down at state duels as well. He looks like a guy who's motivated. I mean, obviously, he lost his last season. He just wrestles and looks like a guy who's motivated to make the most out of this last go-round.
Closing thoughts here, Mitch. Closing thoughts on 145 or 152 through 285. I still got I have a whole nother bracket to go through.
Yeah, you do. Gosh, I mean, throughout this the entire AA field, and not just the guys we talked about, but the guys you and Paul talked about, it really feels like this is a really good collection of potential finals that we have this year.
A very competitive field.
It really does, but it feels like there's your top 2, 3, maybe 4 guys at each weight class, and then there's a little bit of a fall off. So I don't expect to see a ton of surprises this weekend out of the AA field.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with. I think there may be more surprises than you think. I don't know. Maybe not the top tier guys.
They're going to come in different spots. I don't think we're going to see those surprise runs to the semifinals or the finals, but I think you probably see them more on the back half.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with you there. And I also think those pigtails in preliminary rounds, I think you're going to see, some of those weaker regions, some of those guys go down. Because the one thing I've noticed, and especially in looking at these guys' names and sifting through results after results after results, the one thing I notice is there's clumping. There's districts and regions that are just so doggone good. I hate ranking guys from the same region all close together, but that's sometimes you have to do it because they're all just so damn good and they all beat each other up and they're all that close. So you have a lot of regions like that at some weights where you're just like, the top 4 here are just studs. I mean, go back to 133 or 139, the Northeast region. There's just so much depth in one region, where you have state champions and state finalists wrestling in the section tournaments. I mean, a la Cameron Milheim and Connor Hare, Sean Taylor, Dylan Evans. I mean, these guys are wrestling 5-6 times in a year. There's a reason for that, right?
Now we can ask the question if that's good for the sport or not. That's discussion for another day. But is it good to have those guys wrestling 5-6 times a year?
I mean,
Is
don't
it
know.
necessary? That might
It's
be
not necessary, but is it good? I don't know.
I enjoy it. I enjoyed every Connor Hare Cameron Milheim matchup. You know, you can tell me those guys are going to wrestle a 15 match series, and I'm going to get a front row seat for every matchup.
You're not wrong. You're definitely not wrong. Mitch, I appreciate you joining us here tonight, and I hope you stay tuned in for the AAA. That's coming up at 9 o'clock. We're going to be doing some late night podcasting. 9 o'clock will be 107 through 145, and then about like 10:15 will be 152 to heavyweight. So I just had a cup of coffee. Got to put my son to bed. I think my wife already gave him a bath, so I think we're in good shape, Mitch. And,
I'll be here. I got a lot of work to do to put some content up.
Somebody's got to do it because God knows I'm not.
Hey, just a quick preview. I got a feature on Kale Nasdio coming up. I'm going to have a look at the best first-round matches in AA and AAA and some underdogs that maybe you can look at to make a run. So we got a good chunk of stuff to go up.
You're the man, Mitch. It's why we have you. It's why we love you. I did miss a few cousins, I think. I didn't realize Talon Hogan and Tucker Hogan were cousins. I never thought that was a real thing, but they are. So I got to put that up there. I may have missed somebody else too. It's hard to keep track of everything. But Mitch,
it's a good thing all the Wards and the Goods and the Wisniewskis from District 4 are not in here because they're somehow all related. I still don't understand, but they're all related.
Don't worry, they made it up with the Milheims, the Wenzels, the Harers, and you name it. So appreciate it, Mitch. We will see you back here at 9 o'clock sharp for the AAA preview. Stay with us here on PA Power Wrestling on Rockfin. We got a ton of content. Shout out Mitch Rupert. We appreciate it. And Claudia, as always, thanks for tuning in, folks.